Interim Chair Donna Brazile blasting the primary, saying Hillary Clinton was engaged in a secret takeover, exposing a widening rift in that party.
Do you agree with the notion that it was rigged?
Yes.
Well, then, we begin today with a Russia investigation. No fire, but certainly a lot of smoke today. Trump's Attorney General Jeff Sessions is at the center of all of it and being called to testify on Capitol Hill again. Remember, he's already testified 3 different times, been asked about Russia 3 different times, and yet not one single time did he mention the fact that an advisor offered up a meeting between Trump and Vladimir Putin himself. I'm not talking some woman. I'm not talking adoptions. I'm talking Putin. I got a team here to break it all down this morning, starting with Ken Dilanian, NBC intelligence and national security reporter. Kenny D, what do we know? I mean, at this point, you've got some Democrats who want Jeff Sessions to go back under oath. Haven't we been here before?
Good morning, Stephanie. Well, we've known since Monday that Jeff Sessions and Donald Trump presided over this meeting back in March 2016 at which this low-level campaign aide, George Papadopoulos, according to court records, floated the idea of a meeting between Putin and Trump. What we're learning now is that Sessions explicitly rejected this idea. Trump, according to a witness to NBC News, did not react. But Sessions took it on board, rejected it, and according to one account, said we should never talk about this again. The reason that's important is, as you said, Sessions has been grilled under oath in Congress about his contacts with Russians and about the campaign's contact with Russians, because he had to clear up his testimony. He once said he never met with any Russians. Then he had to admit that he met twice with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak. So members of Congress are accusing him of misleading them. Now, he may have some wiggle room because he was very careful to say in more recent testimony, I didn't talk about collusion with any Russians. Well, this meeting wasn't necessarily about collusion. It was about a potential head-to-head between Trump and Putin. But the reason Papadopoulos was able to offer that meeting is because he was colluding, according to the court documents, with some Russians that the FBI pretty clearly believes were close to Russian intelligence. And so you can bet that Jeff Sessions is going to be asked, what did he know about what Papadopoulos had? Now, the other big news, Stephanie, is that Carter Page, another low-level campaign aide with ties to Russia, is now telling NBC News that he informed Jeff Sessions last summer when he met him at a Republican dinner that he was on the way to Russia. He shook Jeff Sessions' hand and said, hey, by the way, I'm headed to Russia in my personal capacity. According to a source close to Sessions, Sessions did not react, simply shook his hand, said nothing, moved on to the next person. But that is going to be another significant issue. You know, Mr. Sessions, why didn't you remember that this campaign aide said he was going to Russia, Stephanie?
Well, I take significant issue with that fishing hat that he's wearing. I mean, it's not raining. There's nowhere to go fishing. There's not even anyone else in the shot with an umbrella. Like, it's just weird. I got to bring my... See, there you go. Like, why is he wearing that hat? It's so strange. All right, I want to bring my panel in. Jason Johnson, an MSNBC political contributor, as well as politics editor at TheRoot.com. Robert Traynham is an MSNBC analyst and vice president of communications at the Bipartisan Policy Center. He's the Republican here, so he has to answer the hardest questions. And Jonathan Kelly, editor, John Kelly, the editor and co-founder of The Hive at Vanity Fair, and Jonathan Swan in the House, the national political reporter at Axios. Jason, I'm going to go to you first. I want to talk about this meeting, March 31st, 2016. George Papadopoulos makes the offer, and I want to share how the New York Times described it. Ready? Quote, he went in to pitch right away, said J.D. Gordon, a campaign advisor who attended the meeting. He said he had a friend in London, the Russian ambassador, who could help set up a meeting with Putin. Mr. Trump listened with interest. Mr. Sessions vehemently opposed the idea, Mr. Gordon recalled, and he said that no one should talk about it because Mr. Sessions thought it was a bad idea. He did not want it to be associated with the campaign. If that is the case, why wouldn't Jeff Sessions have shared that specific story when he was under oath the last 3 times? It makes him look good.
Because he doesn't want people to start asking about Russians in general, so he just claims that he doesn't remember anything. It's like, I don't want you going to London. I've got my own meetings with ambassadors going. This is part of the problem that we were starting months ago when Jeff Sessions and several people first testified. Your lying might actually be worse than anything you ever did. If you just came forward and said, hey, look, this was about trying to clear up relations with Russia, or we just wanted to find out some information, that will be fine. But the constant dissembling, the constant lying, the pretending that I didn't remember this person and we had borscht, but I don't know how it tastes and that I didn't know what this person's name is, that's what makes people question the honesty.
But this one, the fact that he vehemently opposed it, said, we're not going to... I could buy it when he said, listen, I've met with loads of ambassadors, given my job, it's what we do. But this one, it's really tough to swallow. And I want to remind people of what Sessions said in his most recent testimony that was just a couple of months ago. Take a listen.
You don't believe that surrogates from the Trump campaign had communications with the Russians. Is that what you're saying?
I did not, and I'm not aware of anyone else that did.
Okay, help me out here. If Sessions would have said, I realized, I heard this, I knew it was a terrible idea, given my background in law, in government, I stopped it. He would come out smelling like a rose.
Absolutely. In fact, you would make the argument that he would remember something like that, because most people remember when you're trying to stop something. To your point, you may not remember the hundreds, if not thousands, of people that you meet on a daily or a weekly or monthly basis. Jeff's right. Let's just dial this back for a second. What Attorney General Sessions has to do is go back to Capitol Hill and probably go behind closed doors and says, look, my former colleagues, I messed this up. And this is what I remember, this is what I don't remember. I'm not sure he would do that on camera, but I do think he should do that behind closed doors.
Mr. Kelly?
Because the reality is that he mentioned some untruths under oath, and that's perjury.
Can we stop saying untruths?
Yeah, he's lying.
Lies.
He's been lying the whole time.
I'm tired of hearing non-consensual sex, and I'm tired of hearing untruths.
Got it.
Yeah. They're lies as I understand them, too.
Okay, I got it.
I think we've entered a new phase now, though, seriously, where in the beginning, there was collusion, at least within the Trump world. People were actually talking to each other, and they had some semblance of a plan. And now we're in phase 2, where everyone's on their own. And for Jeff Sessions, untruth may be his best path forward. We're seeing that now with Kushner, who we now know handed over some files in recent weeks to the Mueller investigation
But we don't know what's in those files.
We don't know what's in those files. We have absolutely no idea. But we know that everyone is following the advice of their own attorney. It went from being one big pack of rats to all these individuals out on their own. And that's going to be terrifying. I think this Jeff Sessions news is just the beginning of what we're going to find in the next couple of months.
Okay, Mr. Swan, President Trump has repeatedly said over and over, there's no collusion, it's a hoax, absolutely nothing there, and he continues to divert us with this story and that story. But Robert Mueller, boy, he's on the case.
I think there's no question that the biggest story this week, the biggest thing that we learned from the unsealed indictments is just the range, the wide lens that Mueller is casting. He is prepared to indict people for crimes they committed after the campaign, for crimes they allegedly committed a long time before the campaign, for alleged crimes that have, in some cases, nothing to do with Russia. If you are an associate of Donald Trump, if you worked on the campaign, if you worked with him in business, you have every reason to think that Mueller, if you committed a crime, that Mueller will look into it. As the concentric circles get closer to Donald Trump, the concern level raises up. One person I would flag who is clearly in the mix of these discussions is Michael Cohen, the president's personal lawyer. And when the stories came out about his associations with a former mafia guy, Felix Sater, that was one of the stories, of all the stories that concerned people in Trump's orbit, that was one of the ones that really raised a level of concern. And the only reason is because Michael Cohen's business dealings are inextricably tied to the president's.
I mean, Michael Cohen was President Trump's body guy for years and years. And then
lawyer,
you've got,
very close. Yeah,
lawyer, close enough.
Yeah.
And then you've got Jeff Sessions. We know that now that Carter Page told Jeff Sessions, by the way, while it might not be related to the campaign, I got to head over to Moscow to give a speech.
Well, can I say,
hold on, Jonathan, yes?
I just want to say one thing about Carter Page. I think it's relevant that he spent 7 hours with the House Intelligence Committee yesterday without a lawyer.
Yeah.
He is representing himself. This is insane. This is insane.
Every time I see him on Chris Hayes, I wonder, does he have a lawyer offset, having a heart attack, quitting,
Is there
running?
a connection? Is there a connection between the fishing hat and his lack of a lawyer? That's my question.
Yeah, basically.
But my question is, why would Carter Page mention that to a sitting United States senator? Why would you say that proactively in a meet and greet?
Hey, by the way, I'm headed to Moscow.
Right.
Who does that?
Because it's nice this time of year. I'm looking for the weather. I'm looking for some fishing.
Right.
Here's the thing, though. Ever since, and this is the one that's always struck me, ever since Monday, when you reveal the indictments and you find out that Papadopoulos has possibly been walking around with a wire for 3 months, that every single one of these people who are saying they don't remember these meetings and he could have been recording them.
Okay, Jason, how do you continue to call Papadopoulos the know-nothing coffee boy, who, by the way, has a homeboy who's an ambassador who can set you up with a meeting with Putin? How many baristas are getting you a meeting with Putin?
Well, it's scary when Ty Cobb is the one who's now referring to him as this low-level aide. And it seems like the Trump plan is to take this one day at a time, and they don't realize that it's all going to come out. To go back to Jonathan's point, this is all about who Trump surrounds himself with. And guess what? Trump surrounds himself with some of the shadiest people imaginable at this level of statecraft. So it's all going to come out. And you think that there'd be some more thoughtful, coordinated effort to actually get the information out there? Because Mueller is like Omar in The Wire. Like, Omar's coming.
Well, let's just cut to the chase here. Robert Mueller knows what he's doing. He's playing four-dimensional chess here. He is playing the long game. And Donald Trump can't fire him. I mean, legally he can, but politically he can't.
And also at this point, we can actually, even if you're only nominally paying attention, you can put the pieces together, right? This is the end of Clue. We know, is it Sessions in the kitchen with Kislyak? We know, is it Papadopoulos, in the pantry with WikiLeaks? Like, we can actually put the pieces together now. This is no longer speculative, so it's really going to be an issue of at what point do Republicans in Congress actually say, oh my gosh, we may have to do something about this when Mueller's done with the investigation?
I'm going to go, he was in the kitchen with Clovis. Jonathan Swan, I want to talk about President Trump's frustration, though. Not just that he can't fire Mueller, but he cannot get his mitts deep in the Department of Justice and these other agencies. Take a listen.
The State Department.
You know, the saddest thing is that because I'm the President of the United States, I am not supposed to be involved with the Justice Department. I'm not supposed to be involved with the FBI. I'm not supposed to be doing the kind of things that I would love to be doing. And I'm very frustrated by it.
Well, I'm sorry, it's not a monarchy. The president actually just spoke on the South Law. We're going to share those thoughts.
We have a big conference, a second conference, and I think we're going to have great success. We'll be talking about trade. We'll be talking about, obviously, North Korea. We'll be enlisting the help of a lot of people and countries. We'll see what happens, but I think we're going to have a very successful trip. There's a lot of goodwill. I don't remember much about that meeting. It was a very unimportant meeting. Took place a long time. Don't remember much about it. All I can tell you is this. There was no collusion. There was no nothing. It's a disgrace, frankly, that they continue. You ought to look at Hillary Clinton, and you ought to look at the new book that was just put out by Donna Brazile, where she basically bought the DNC and she stole the election from Bernie. So that's what you ought to take a look at. What we're doing is every time we're attacked from this point forward, and it took place yesterday, we are hitting them 10 times harder. So when we have an animal do an attack like he did the other day on the west side of Manhattan, we are hitting them 10 times harder. They claimed him as a soldier. Good luck. Every time they hit us, we know it's ISIS. We hit them like you folks won't believe. Thank you. I will see you. I will see you in Pearl Harbor. We're going to Pearl Harbor. I don't know. I'm really not involved with the Justice Department. I'd like to let it run itself. But honestly, they should be looking at the Democrats. They should be looking at Podesta and all of that dishonesty. They should be looking at a lot of things. And a lot of people are disappointed in the Justice Department, including me. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to quickly say out of that it was yesterday to Fox News. I just aired that just 30 seconds ago where the president says, I'm not involved with the Justice Department, but I'd really like to be. And then just a moment ago, he said, let's let the Justice Department do their thing. And I'd also like to say, anyone who says the president doesn't like his job, they're wrong. He loves it. Let's bring in Hans Nichols, who is standing up. We don't have Hans. All right.
Well, let me tell you what I think what happened. I think the president misspoke yesterday on Fox News. I think his staff went to him and said, sir, with all due respect, the Justice Department needs to be independent. There is an independent Justice Department for this very reason. He woke up this morning on the South Lawn getting on Marine One, and he probably remembered that talking point from yesterday, and then he said what he just said about the Justice Department being separate.
But Jonathan Swan, does it matter that the president cleaned up what he said and then said something different on his talking points this morning? When he was speaking yesterday, that's what's in his heart, that's what's in his head.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at all. And what is absolutely, he even hinted at, I mean, that clip you just played just off, just moments ago, you could tell from that clip that he's yearning for them to be a political operation. He wants to turn the FBI and the Justice Department into a political operation, going after his political enemies. Like, he mentioned Podesta, he mentioned, Clinton. So, I mean, even though he put out the talking point, he contradicted it within moments. This is, I mean, we need to say this is unprecedented and wildly inappropriate.
Oh, no, Jonathan, all guests have to pay $2 if they say unprecedented during this show.
It is. Find me an example from modern presidential history where we have had a president so publicly clamoring for his Justice Department to be weaponized on his behalf. Perhaps other presidents have yearned privately for it, but have we ever seen anything like this? I haven't.
Yes, we have. It's called Watergate back in 1972 and 73. So we know this by history.
Wait a second. Was he as public as we just, was he as nakedly public about it as this president?
No, but that wasn't your point. So two things.
No, it was my point.
So two things. One, Richard Nixon was much more savvier, much more political, and much more obviously nuanced because he was a trained attorney, he was the vice president, he was a senator, he was a congressman, so he knew what he was doing. The question here is whether or not Donald Trump knows what he's doing. But to your point, we have seen this before, and we saw the president most recently, almost 44 years ago, do almost the same exact thing.
But we
know you're a Republican, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay,
but, I mean, that's just
a question. Clear that up for everybody.
But that's just an historical fact, though.
Yes, Jason?
We've seen it, but we also, at that point, had a Congress that was more willing to put the country before partisanship.
Of course.
We also didn't have Twitter. Yeah. But I think another key point to this that can't be overlooked is, I mean, remember, this is the guy who fired Comey. So any notion that he doesn't want to be involved, he literally admitted that I fired, a sitting attorney general because I didn't like what he was investigating. We already know that he's engaged in obstruction of justice. And actually, even his commentary alone, I'd like you to do this, I wish this wouldn't happen, I wish that wouldn't happen. In a court of law, that would be seen to be influencing the investigation anyway. So it's
all right. Well, we're seeing President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump now. They're getting on to Air Force One. As he said, the next place you'll see him is Pearl Harbor. We know his daughter Ivanka has already started her trip to Asia. This is going to be a big trip. Can President Trump have any sort of impact on this trip to Asia while he's dealing with all of these, we call them distractions, but disasters here, Jonathan Swan?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump the people have used the word day trader to describe the way he conducts himself, and it's true. He does what he needs to do to get through the moment, and he moves on to the next moment. And so I fully expect him to do exactly the same, in Asia. As these stories pop up, if new stories pop up, he will react to them. It could throw him off balance. I think it really depends on what does come out during the trip. But he is perfectly capable of, moving past something that happened in the morning, firing off a few angry tweets, and then, the funny thing about Trump, and when you talk to people inside the White House, is you often see the public assumption from his tweets that his mood is sort of set for the morning. But when you talk to people who are actually with him, he does fume, he does go into these sort of rages and sends off tweets.
Especially when anything gets near his taxes or Russia.
100%. But you could often see him within 5 minutes talking about, something on Fox or whatever. He really does sort of, his moods are very quick moving, is what I'd say for that.
All right, we have to leave it there. We're going to take a quick break. Thank you all. I'd like to point out, while the president